Coming up on this edition of INTV, we have an exclusive interview with INEOS's founders, John, Andy and Sir Jim, to hear about some of the key moments from the last 25 years. We hear about the one deal that truly transformed the business. All this and the latest news from around the INEOS Group. "2023 marks the 25th anniversary of INEOS. So for this edition, we've come here to Lyndhurst in Hampshire, where it started all those years ago. Just a few miles from here, a small group of people started a chemicals business that would become one of the biggest companies in the world. From Acetyls to automotive, from football to fashion, from sanitisers to styrenics and more. It's been a remarkable journey. So to mark the occasion, we sat down with the three people who made it happen. John Rees, Andy Curry, and of course, Sir Jim Ratcliffe.
I was just thinking that if we had decided that 25 years ago we had been successful and we'd quit then, I'm just trying to think how many pina coladas I could have drunk in the last 25 years. I might not be here, actually, right. Yeah.
Jim, John and Andy, take one.
It's fatal in a way, in business terms, if you think, this is where I want to get to. You've seen it so many times in business, you're tempted to make decisions to get to this point you've decided you want to arrive at, and you make the wrong decisions on the way. What we do is we look at opportunities as we go along. From an acquisition point of view, we're probably 1 in 10. For every 10 deals we look at, we do one. But I mean, a deal isn't a 5-minute job. You know, deals normally a minimum of 6 to 9 months and a lot of sort of concentrated effort. Look what we've done in INNOVENE in Europe, for instance, where we just, you know, consolidated that whole PVC industry in Europe. We've turned a business which for 10 years didn't make a dime.
Make any money at all.
To be probably one of my, you know, it makes $1 billion business now. So it makes $1 billion a year. For us, I think that virtual pipeline, I mean, it does stand out as being a really interesting achievement.
To be fair, when it was first suggested, it was Lane who suggested it.
Yeah, Lane, yeah.
And they said, you must be bonkers. And then they looked into it and I said, you better do the full mass of this. Because don't forget, it was coming out of Pennsylvania down an old oil pipeline, converted, and had to build a tank. I mean, it was an enormously complicated project. And
also enter into a 15-year gas contract.
Yeah.
To the tune of about 15 billion.
But the maths do work. Well, obviously we did it, and it's essentially it saved Grangemouth. Without that supply line, Grangemouth will be no doubt.
The thing I remember on the day you're talking about, we were all in Grangemouth and the ship arrived. It was actually too windy to dock, but the ship was there. You know, we had the media and all the great and good were there. But the thing I do remember was, bearing in mind
Nicola Sturgeon didn't make it.
S&P didn't turn up for the biggest manufacturing employer in Scotland. Yeah. And this was securing those jobs.
We're about all that's left of Scottish manufacturing, and this was the saviour. Otherwise, we'd have had to shut it down. But, you know, by far and away, the biggest employer in Scotland would have collapsed. The reason that we've been successful in chemicals, and we're largely in petrochemicals or commodity chemicals, you know, the big-scale chemicals, is it became a business which became unpopular, unsexy, unfashionable about 25 years ago. So a number of those businesses came up on the market that were not particularly expensive because there weren't that many people chasing them. But what's happening in oil and gas is very similar today with what's happened with petrochemicals 25 years. It's become unpopular, unfashionable, unsexy, hasn't it, oil and gas? But the planet can't live without oil and gas, certainly for another 30 or 40 years. And so that's an interesting business for INEOS.
What was the darkest day? What's your recollection of the darkest moment that the company faced?
Well, I think the darkest moment, we probably all agree, was 2008-09.
It should have been their busiest day of the year. Instead, they had to twiddle their thumbs, reeling from a crash of a different kind.
Amid the chaos was the spectre of forced selling from huge investment.
We ended up in default with the banks. We had to negotiate with a steering committee, which is not a great place to be, because all of these are very aggressive hedge funds had bought the bonds at 10p on the pound and ended up owning the debt. And they were just looking for a way to shaft the rest of the debt holders, really, and take control of the company. But they didn't really want control of the company. They wanted us to run it for them. Anyway, we eventually agreed a deal with the committee, but you had to put it to the wider syndicate, 300 lenders, and we had to turn up in a meeting in Glazier's Hall. The night before was Bruce Springsteen at Hyde Park. And I remember thinking, well, if he can stand up in front of 30,000 people, we should be okay with 300. But the difference is the 30,000 wanted to see him. The 300 didn't want to see us.
No. Yeah, we do the decision.
Do you get paid for this job?
From an outside point of view, it looks like you're having increasing amounts of fun these days.
Fun's a good word. I mean, if it isn't fun, we're not going to do it really, because we've sort of got to a point in life where we don't have to do it by any means.
Some of the fun, when we went into sport, obviously.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a left turn.
This humble farmer,
Kipchoge in 2 hours, that was amazing to be there. That was fantastic. Yeah. And when the cycling team won the Tour de France and we were all in Paris with Egan Bernal, that was another amazing day. Football obviously is fun when you're successful.
Yes.
We've got probably the best cycling team in the world. We obviously own a good chunk of Mercedes Formula One. Trying to bring football up to the same level. Manchester United is clearly at that level.
The Manchester United bid would have been unthinkable 2 or 3 years ago if we hadn't had some of the experiences, and quite a few of them difficult experiences with Lausanne and Nice. You can't really contemplate acquiring a brand like Manchester United and failing, because the failure is just far too public and too excruciating failure in a deal like that, really.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you shouldn't forget the America's Cup. Second attempt at getting that famous trophy. Long sought after by the Brits and to date miserably not achieved, so hopefully we can give it a pretty decent shot, give the team a decent yacht to chase around the opposition.
Well, we are relatively unique, that's for sure. There aren't many INEOSs around. I mean, we've been around for a long time, so you don't have management that changes every 10 minutes, and we're sort of consistent in the way we behave and the way we run the business, and people get used to that, and some people like it, some people don't like it. We give people a lot of responsibility, so they effectively run their own businesses in an environment which is supportive.
And it's this kind of decentralised, run your own business. Would you spend that if it was your personal money?
The only time we've ever had to micromanage was actually during the crisis, when then it was, we just sent out directives saying you will do this, cut this, do this. But normally that was an outlier. The normal behaviour is not that, and it's one where they look after their own ship.
We also have that other rule, which is that you're not allowed to retire unless we allow you to.
Which does mean there's a lot of experience in INEOS.
Yeah. Nobody's allowed to retire.
As we've heard, the last 25 years has been one hell of a ride. From our beginnings here in Hampshire through to a global company with a diverse portfolio in chemicals, energy, automotive, fashion, sport and more, with 26,000 people who really shaped the organisation. But there is one moment, more than any other, that truly transformed this company and created what we see today.
I think what was happening back in the early part of 2000 is the big integrated companies were trying to find ways to grow. And what was clear, if you looked at the previous 2 decades, were the big remuneration was available to you and the big returns was in the oil and gas upstream. And chemicals, in some respects, certainly within BP, had become a bit of an orphan business. Basically, pretty much everything was up for grabs at that point.
We spent a lot of time and a lot of energy getting to the point where we were a decent-sized chemical company. We'd obviously been acquisitive over a number of years, because we're talking about 2005. We started in '98, so it became 6 or 7 years. We'd done a couple of deals every year, and we'd always delivered.
We had by then developed something of a track record of buying these sort of unloved assets, simplifying the cost base, reducing the cost structure, but also then starting to develop them.
We were, in our terms, doing quite well. And then all of a sudden this BP opportunity came along.
BP decided that they would divest a key part of their chemicals business, which was INNOVENE at the time.
The plan was very clear. We were going to IPO it. It was going to float off into the market. We had already started the whole prospectus piece that had been running for a long period of time.
As far as the staff were concerned, as far as the management were concerned, that's what was going to happen. But in the meantime, there were very quiet negotiations going on at the top between Jim and the board of BP.
It was a really intensive process and very stressful. I remember John was working all God's hours.
Jim was on a bike ride, I remember, in Scotland, and he had to pull over in a verge somewhere and take a call from the BP finance director, the outcome of which was we're going to have to find some more money. So there was a you must be joking moment. Anyway, we went back to the banks and said, change of plan, it's not 8, it's 9.
But I mean, there is also, there is a school of thought that says, the more debt you've got, the safer you are, because, the banks can't allow it to collapse.
So suddenly the deal was done, much to the amazement, not only of people on the outside, but also people on the inside, both inside INEOS and inside INNOVENE.
The fact that management were not told until the day of our deal was astonishing.
We came into work one morning and heard that a company called INEOS had gone to BP, and based on the documents that we had prepared for the stock exchange filing, had decided to buy the whole lock, stock and barrel in one fell swoop.
Here we were working for a major petrochemical company. We were going to get floated in the stock market with all the unknowns that that meant. And we suddenly got told that a company called INEOS were going to buy us.
That we had Google back then, we were trying to find out who INEOS was.
I think for people like me, and there was a number of people like me, there was quite a lot of excitement. Because what we saw was the rigid, almost jail-like structure that BP put around us that stopped us doing things.
One of the seniors brought me into an office and said, John, you've got a rather unique position here. You can decide, you can either stay with BP, which is where your history was in the bit that we're not selling, or you can go with INEOS. So the night I had a conversation with my wife about whether I should stay with BP Chemicals, or whether we should take a risk and go with this company we've never heard of, INEOS, privately owned, on a roller coaster adventure, and we chose INEOS. And what a good decision that was.
It's an astonishing tale, and it does make you wonder how different things would be if the INNOVENE deal hadn't happened. Now, I'm joined now by a couple of people who've been involved in this pretty well through the whole part of our history. I'll start with you, Jill, because you were around a bit longer. What was the company like when you first started?
INEOS itself, nobody had ever heard of it. John, Jim and Andy, nobody had ever heard of them. I think initially everybody thought this is going to be some form of venture capitalist where they're going to come in and cut costs and get out quickly. Yep. How wrong could we have possibly been? The ICI businesses in 2001 got split into different businesses, so the sense of ownership was there from the word go. You owned the responsibility for what you needed to do, for the growth, for the safety, for everything. Personal responsibility was big on INEOS, yep. And I think that was very different to PLC land, and we liked it.
We talk a lot about INEOS culture, particularly you coming in from a BP culture. How quickly did you get the INEOS culture?
The whole year before INEOS came in, we'd spent a year trying to get the costs out, and we'd employed a lot of very expensive consultants to help us get the costs out, and we basically achieved nothing. That first year of INEOS, all the delegations of authority were taken away, up to the CEO. We literally chopped all the corporate cards away. And once you're over that initial shock, it's a snowball effect, because you start looking for more and more and more of these savings. Our safety performance had improved, our reliability had got better. Safety, reliability and cost became the toolkit for any other company that we integrated into INEOS.
Did you ever envisage where we would be today?
No, you couldn't. I mean, I think we learnt pretty quickly that coming out of the BP system, INEOS was a serious player.
Yeah.
If somebody had said to me back in 2001 where we'd be today, I would have said they're bonkers, absolutely bonkers. And if somebody asks me where we're going to be in another 10 years, I just wouldn't like to guess, but I know it'll be somewhere different, and it'll be just as invigorating and fun.
It's a great way to finish. Jill,
Okay.
Simon, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
As we've heard, there's no taking it easy here at INEOS, and this month is no exception. So let's take a look at some of the things that are happening across the INEOS Group.
As part of our 25th anniversary celebrations, INEOS invited 7 leading journalists and industry experts alongside Sir Jim Ratcliffe to contribute to a landmark book on the history of the business. Guest authors, who were given complete editorial freedom, included financial journalist Dominic O'Connell, automotive presenter Quintin Wilson, and Sebastian Coe. The book has just been published and will be available to order from all good booksellers. Following the start of series production of the Grenadier 4x4 last year, INEOS Automotive have launched a new model at the famous Goodwood Festival of Speed. The new Quartermaster made its debut on the famous hill climb and at a press conference for the automotive press.
For us, right now is such an exciting time for INEOS Automotive because we've finally got cars rolling off the production line at our facility in Hambach into customers' hands. To now be launching our second car line is just beyond exciting.
And something else that's obviously very good off-road, the new Grenadier.
Yeah, this is the Quartermaster, isn't it? So this is it's the first time we've seen this version of the Grenadier, even though the Grenadier now is starting to be on the market all over the world. And this is a slightly longer wheelbase too, isn't it?
The reception for the new Quartermaster has, as with most things, kind of completely blows our mind because people are just so excited. We started the press conference about 11 o'clock on Thursday morning, and by 11:30, when we weren't even finished yet, we had already received our first order as we opened the order books on the same day.
But what do the public think?
To drive a Grenadier today is a big event for me. I've really enjoyed it. What a piece of kit.
The INEOS Grenadier is a vehicle that I think especially a lot of US consumers have not been introduced to in a long time. It offers a lot of kind of capability but also utilitarian versatility, which is unique to the market, and I think it's a pretty exciting vehicle.
Also making its first public appearance is the prototype of the Grenadier hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, demonstrating how well suited the zero emissions technology is for a future long-range 4x4.
Certainly INEOS finding a lot of friends with their Grenadier range. They really have been. Hydrogen fuel cell, this model that we're watching fly past. Now, I'm very impressed with the hydrogen element in that. I'm a big fan with the technology in that quarter.
Hydrogen vehicle is a really good choice for a heavy off-road vehicle. Hydrogen is the new technology everyone talks about. We hope and believe that our governments will improve infrastructure quite soon. I think if infrastructure is ready, we are ready with a car.
Goodwood has been huge for us this year. 2023 will be memorable.
After a year of practicing with the test boat in Palma, Sir Ben Ainsley and the INEOS Britannia team are now ready to set up shop in Barcelona, the location for the 37th America's Cup.
We're really happy to be here in Barcelona now. It is, of course, the racecourse for the America's Cup next year. So to be out there at the same time of year on the same patch of water, got a fantastic base set up, big credit to the team. Barcelona is just an amazing venue for the America's Cup. It's a beautiful city, it's very iconic, got a lot of culture. Also out in the water, it's a great sailing venue.
With rival competitors also arriving in Barcelona, there is a lot of pressure on the team to perform well.
We keep a real close eye on our competition, and one of the benefits of being here now is that we're out in the water at the same time as our competitors. That said, there are very firm rules in terms of the observation of the other teams or reconnaissance.
But it may be the waters that provide the greatest challenge.
The main difference between a venue like Barcelona and, say, Auckland is really the sea state. It's going to get rough, and that'll be a real challenge for all of the teams to deal with the big sea states and the foiling boats. It's very difficult to handle, and with such a wide range of conditions for the design teams, the engineers, very difficult to try and figure out, how do we mode the boat, how do we design the boat for what specific conditions, because there's such a big range.
The past 25 years has been extraordinary, driven by the passion and determination of people across INEOS and beyond. And while we won't try and predict what the next 25 years have in store for us, I'm sure that it'll be full of unexpected opportunities, reveal new passions, and create excitement for us all. Until next time, goodbye.